The night before her wedding, the world outside Emily's window was quiet, wrapped in the stillness that only comes before something life-changing. The house was full of soft laughter, glasses clinking, and the sound of her friends' heels clicking across the floor as they celebrated her last night as a miss. But Emily sat alone in her room, her wedding dress hanging on the back of the door, glowing in the dim light, like a promise she wasn't sure she was ready to make. Her heart felt full and heavy all at once. Full because she had Daniel, the man who had shown her nothing but devotion, who had loved her without limits or conditions. And heavy because of what she had never told him. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She glanced at it, not expecting anything unusual. But when she read the name on the screen, her breath caught. It was Alex. After all this time, after all, the silence. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened the message. Just a single sentence. I never stopped thinking about you. Simple, but enough to pull the ground out from beneath her feet. For a moment, she didn't move. She just stared at the words, her heart beating too fast, her mind spinning with 1,000 questions and 1,000 memories. Why now? Why tonight? She should have ignored it. She knew that. But the truth was, Alex had always lived in the corners of her heart, the parts she tried not to visit too often. Maybe she had never really stopped thinking about him either. And maybe that was the problem. She couldn't carry this weight into her marriage, not without being fair to Daniel. So, just before sunrise, she slipped out of the house, barefoot, her robe wrapped tight around her. She found Daniel outside in the garden, exactly where she thought he'd be, sitting on the wooden bench near the old olive tree, quietly going over his vows in his head. He looked up, surprised but not alarmed, his expression open and warm, the way it always was with her. Emily sat beside him, her hands cold, her heart louder than her voice. And then, slowly, she began to tell him everything. About the fall, too, years ago. About the man who walked into her life unexpectedly and left without warning. About the nights she cried in secret, and the pieces of herself she was still learning to put back together. About the message. About how it made her feel, something she didn't want to feel on the night before her wedding. Daniel didn't say a word for a long time. He just listened. Really listened. When she finished, she looked away, afraid to see disappointment in his eyes. But when he finally spoke, his voice was calm and kind, steady like the man she had always known. We all have someone we once cared for, he said quietly. Someone who helped shape us. What matters is who we choose now. Emily's eyes filled with tears, not because she was sad, but because she felt seen in a way she didn't think she deserved. He didn't ask her to forget Alex. He didn't punish her for remembering. Instead, he gave her something rarer, a chance to be fully known and still loved. In that garden, surrounded by morning light and unspoken fears, Emily felt something. Deeper than passion, she felt trust. And in that moment, she realized that love wasn't about being untouched by the past. It was about choosing someone who would walk with you through it, hand in hand, with eyes wide open. The morning of the wedding arrived slowly, wrapped in golden light and the quiet hum of new beginnings. Emily stood by the window in her gown, watching the garden below where the ceremony would take place in just a few short hours. The world outside felt brand new, but her heart was still tender from the night before. She could still hear Daniel's voice echoing in her mind, soft and steady. What matters is who we choose now. That sentence had unraveled something deep inside her. It was the kind of love she hadn't believed she deserved. The kind that saw every part of her, even the pieces bruised by past goodbyes. And now, as the soft morning breeze played with the sheer curtains and the scent of blooming jasmine floated through the air, Emily felt an unfamiliar kind of peace. Not the peace that comes from perfection, but the kind that comes from honesty. from being fully known and still completely loved. She thought back to Alex, not with pain, but with gentleness. What they had was real, but it was never meant to last. It had taught her how deeply she could feel, how wide her heart could open. But Daniel had shown her what it meant to stay. As the ceremony began, music filled the air, soft strings and piano, the kind of melody that wraps around you like memory. Emily walked slowly down the aisle, her eyes locked on Daniel's. He stood, beneath the archway, wearing the same smile he had the first time he told her he loved her, the same expression he wore the morning she told him about her past. It wasn't just love in his eyes. It was something stronger. Acceptance, choice, the promise of building a life one truth at a time. Every step she took toward him felt like stepping out of a shadow and into the warmth of something sacred. When she reached him, he took her hands like he always had, gently, without hesitation. The vows they spoke weren't grand or poetic. They were simple, honest. She promised not only to love him, but to let him in, even on the days when it would be easier to hide. He promised to keep choosing her, even when life grew messy or uncertain. Their words weren't perfect, but they were real, and that was more than enough. Later, as the sun set and soft laughter filled the evening air, Emily and Daniel sat side by side under twinkle lights, watching their guests dance and drink and fall a little more in love with the night. He leaned toward her, whispering, "You were brave, you know." She smiled, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. "No," she whispered back. "I just didn't want to begin forever with a secret." And he kissed her forehead, not as a reward, but as a quiet thank you, as a way of saying, "I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere." In that moment, Emily understood that love is not the absence of past pain, but the presence of someone willing to walk beside you through it. She had loved before, yes, but this was different. This was a love that didn't ask her to erase her story. It simply asked her to bring all of it, and to begin again, hand in hand, heart fully open. And so, under the canopy of stars and promises, Emily stepped into her new life, not because she had forgotten the past, but because she had finally let it go. If you like video, subscribe to Echo Tales for deeply emotional, romantic, and mature stories that echo through your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support meaningful storytelling. From the outside, everything looked perfect. The church was dressed in white roses, the air smelled of lavender and soft rain, and Emily stood in front of the mirror in her bridal suite, her fingers gently brushing the lace on her wedding dress. The delicate fabric clung to her like a second skin, but her heart was not quite where everyone expected it to be. Her smile in the photos was real, but behind it lived a secret she had never spoken aloud. Not to her mother, not to her friends, not even to Daniel, the man she was about to marry. It wasn't because she didn't love him. She did. Daniel was safe, kind, and steady in ways that made her feel grounded, even adored. His love was soft, like sunlight on sleepy mornings, or the comfort of a familiar song. But in the quiet corners of her soul, where memories hide and old feelings rest, there was someone else. It had all started 2 years ago, before she had even met Daniel. It was a time when Emily's life felt like it was on pause, stuck between jobs, unsure of where she was going, and emotionally worn out from a series of empty relationships. Then, one late September evening, she met him. Alex. It wasn't planned. She had wandered into a little bookstore cafe to escape the cold. And there he was, reading alone by the window with a cup of black coffee and eyes that seemed lost in another world. Their conversation started with a shared comment about the weather and a worn-out copy of a novel they both loved. But by the end of that evening, Emily had laughed more than she had in months. Something about Alex made her feel like the world had color again. What followed were weeks of slow, beautiful moments. Walks through the city under fading autumn, leaves, deep talks about dreams and regrets, and long silences that somehow felt more intimate than words. But it was complicated. Alex was not free, not in the way she needed. He was tangled in a past he couldn't yet let go of, healing from a breakup he wasn't ready to talk about. So Emily never told him how she felt. She never confessed that. Every time he looked at her heart beat a little faster. Instead, she watched him drift away, quietly, gently, like a dream fading at dawn. He left town without warning, and with him, he took a piece of her heart. And then came Daniel. Reliable, sweet Daniel. He entered her life like a warm breeze through an open window. Easy, effortless, and good for her. He loved her in ways Alex never could. He listened when she was quiet, waited when she was unsure, and slowly built a future with her, brick by brick. Emily thought time would wash away Alex's shadow, and for the most part, it did. But standing here now, about to vow her life to another man, the past stirred within her like a forgotten song playing faintly in the background. No one else knew. Not her bridesmaids laughing downstairs, not her mother adjusting the veil, and certainly not Daniel, who was probably straightening his tie with that boyish grin she loved. The secret lived only inside her, wrapped in silk and memory. As she looked at her reflection, something inside her whispered, "Can you truly give your whole heart if a piece still belongs to the past?" But there was no time to answer. The music had started. The door was about to open. And Emily had a choice: to walk toward a future she had carefully built, or to listen to a truth she had never dared to speak. Long before white roses and wedding vows, there was Autumn and Alex. He came into Emily's life like a story half-written, full of mystery and quiet intensity. They met on an ordinary day that became unforgettable, in that little bookstore cafe on 9th Street. Emily wasn't looking for anything that day. Maybe just a moment of stillness, something to fill the empty spaces she had been carrying for so long. But when she looked up and saw Alex for the first time, something shifted. He didn't smile, like most people did. His smile was slow, thoughtful, and rare. But when it came, it felt like it was meant only for her. They talked about books, favorite childhood movies, the kind of music that makes you feel understood. She couldn't believe how natural it felt, like continuing a conversation they had started in another life. That first meeting turned into many more. Not dates exactly, but moments. Moments that felt like they meant more than either of them said out loud. They walked through parks painted with red and gold leaves, shared coffee on cold mornings, and watched the city lights in silence that never felt awkward. Alex listened like he was learning her by heart. He asked questions that no one else thought to ask. With him, Emily felt seen, not the polished version she showed the world, but the soft, unsure, beautifully flawed person. She was underneath. She never had to explain herself. He just understood. But behind his warmth, there was always a shadow. Alex never spoke much about his past, but Emily sensed there was someone he hadn't let go of. A woman, a heartbreak, something deep and unresolved. Sometimes his eyes would drift, and for a moment, it felt like he was somewhere else entirely. Emily never pushed him. She told herself it was enough to just be near him, to feel what they had, even if it was never fully hers. She thought maybe time would change things. Maybe one day he'd wake up and realize she was the one who had been standing beside him all along. But that day never came. One evening in late November, he told her he had to leave. It wasn't dramatic, just a quiet goodbye, a few soft words, and a lingering hug that said more than either of them dared to speak. He didn't promise to come back, and she didn't ask him to stay. It was one of those moments where the heart breaks in complete silence. Emily tried to move on. She kept herself busy, made new plans, started fresh, and then, a few months later, she met Daniel. Everything with him was different. Where Alex was quiet and unpredictable, Daniel was open and steady. He offered her love without hesitation, built a world where she felt safe to grow, to laugh, to hope again. He never made her guess how he felt. Being with him was like breathing. Easy, necessary, healing. And slowly, Emily's life began to reshape around this new love, this new man who held her with both arms and no secrets. But memories aren't always buried by time. Some stay soft and lingering, like perfume on a letter or the faint melody of a song you once danced to. As Emily prepared to walk down the aisle, Alex's memory wasn't painful, but it was real. His presence didn't haunt her. It whispered, gently, reminding her that the heart doesn't always forget. That before Daniel there was a quiet kind of love, a beginning that never had an ending. And though she had chosen her future, she carried the memory of Alex like a pressed flower in a closed book, still beautiful, still fragile, but no longer blooming.